History remembers the dead, but what about the man who survived? On June 25, 1876, as Custer's 7th Cavalry rode to their doom at Little Bighorn, one soldier carried the general's final words and lived to tell the tale. His name was Private John Martin, an Italian immigrant turned cavalry trumpeter. The Army called him a hero. The history books called him a footnote. But the truth was far more dangerous. Why was he the only messenger spared? What really happened to Custer's last order? And why did Martin spend the rest of his life haunted by whispers of cowardice? This is the untold story of the battle's most controversial survivor, the man who outlived Custer's last stand, only to be condemned by history. The secrets he kept, the enemies he made, and the message that may have changed everything, if only anyone had believed him. You've heard the legend. Now discover the truth behind Custer's last messenger. Before we continue, please like and subscribe to support the community. Private John Martin, alternatively known as Giovanni Martino, was an Italian-born American soldier who acted as a bugler for the 7th Cavalry Regiment of the U.S. Army. He earned distinction as one of the rare survivors of the Battle of Little Bighorn, often termed Custer's Last Stand, on June 25, 1876. Born in Italy in 1852, Martin emigrated to the U.S. and joined the Army in 1873. Posted to the 7th Cavalry, he participated in numerous operations, including the decisive clash at Little Bighorn. Amid the fighting, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer ordered Martin to rush a message to Captain Frederick Benteen, placing him among the final witnesses to Custer's final moments. Martin's escape enabled him to later provide a thorough testimony, now regarded as a key historical document. Just before 8 o'clock on June 25th, my superior, Captain Benteen, directed me to present myself to General Custer as his designated trumpeter. The regiment then stood miles from the watershed between the Rosebud and Little Bighorn rivers, halted after a nighttime march to prepare coffee. We knew Indians lurked nearby, having traversed deserted camps for 2 days and tracked a well-worn trail from the Rosebud. On June 24th, we'd even found recently slaughtered buffalo carcasses. Reporting to the general, I received only a curt nod in acknowledgement. He was conferring with a scout called Bloody Knife, who described a sprawling village in the valley, hundreds of lodges, and an estimated 5,000 Sioux. I eavesdropped nearby. Though I grasped none of the scout's speech, the general's probing questions and the interpreter's replies clarified the stakes. That morning, Custer dressed in a blue-gray flannel shirt, buckskin breeches, and knee-high boots. His standard-issue company hat covered his scalp, and his trademark yellow hair was cropped shorter, no longer the flowing locks of prior years. Shortly after, he sprang onto his horse bareback and circled the camp, murmuring orders to officers. By 8:30 a.m., the column stood ready, scouts forging ahead. We trailed at a walk 15 minutes later, me riding 2 paces behind the general. Progress was steady until roughly 2 hours onward, we stopped at a steep ravine. The general rode off with scouts while I stayed with the adjutant. This was when he ascended a vantage point on the divide to scout the Sioux encampment Bloody Knife had sighted. His reconnaissance took time. Upon returning, he learned of fresh pony tracks nearby, confirming Sioux awareness of our position in the ravine. Instantly, he barked at me to sound the officer's call, abandoning all pretense of secrecy. For 2 prior days, trumpet signals had been banned, and our march had been stealthy. Now everything changed. Officers clustered around the general for a hushed conference. Troopers were kept back, but soon officers returned to their companies. We pressed forward, cresting the divide near noon. Moments later, The general muttered to the adjutant, too low for me to catch, and pointed leftward. The general displayed both astonishment and satisfaction, remarking the Sioux must be sleeping in their dwellings. From our elevated position, we spotted no sign of Reno's detachment. I'm certain the general never saw them, for after thoroughly scanning the area with his field glasses, he simply declared, "We've caught them this time." Turning in his saddle, he removed and waved his hat to the soldiers waiting below, shouting encouragement, "Hurrah, men! We've got them! We'll finish this and return to garrison." We then descended to the troops, where he briefly informed the adjutant of our observations. Maintaining a brisk pace, we advanced until encountering a major gully leading riverward. About a mile downstream from our vantage point, having traveled at alternating trots and gallops, the general gestured toward the ravine and summoned me. We were approximately 3 miles from Reno's last known position. Without halting, the general instructed, "Orderly, deliver this message to Colonel Benteen immediately. Ride at top speed. Inform him it's a large village and he must hurry with the ammunition packs." I acknowledged when the adjutant interjected, "Wait, orderly," then hastily scribbled the message in a notebook before tearing out the page. "Take our inbound trail," he directed. "Return if feasible, otherwise remain with your company." Though my mount was exhausted, I raced back along our path. My final glimpse of the regiment showed them charging into the ravine, the gray horse troop at center. Reapproaching the hill, gunfire erupted behind me. Concealed warriors emerged, some shooting, others waving buffalo hides. As I neared the crest, I unexpectedly met Boston Custer at full gallop. He reined up shouting, "Where's the general?" I indicated the next ridge before he spurred away, his final living moment witnessed. From the hilltop, Reno's engaged battalion now appeared, where minutes earlier we'd seen no combatants. Dozens of warriors circled his dismounted skirmishers, though I couldn't pause to assess numbers while under fire myself. Bullets whizzed past, miraculously missing me, though my horse took a hip wound I'd discover later. The scorching heat and my mount's fatigue slowed me, but I pressed on desperately, seeking Benteen. Retracing our route to the watering spot, I finally spotted his approaching column and weakly signaled with my hat, my injured horse incapable of greater speed. Benteen rode well ahead of his troops, with only his trumpeter, Captain Weir, trailing by several hundred yards. Saluting, I delivered both message and verbal instructions about the village's size and urgency. When questioned about Custer's position, I suggested he'd likely charge through the settlement by then. Attempts to mention Reno's engagement were cut short by Benteen, noticing my horse's injury. "Tired? Look at his hip!" he exclaimed, spotting the blood. "Fortunate it's the horse and not you." Weir arrived as Benteen handed him the message and assigned me to rejoin my unit. After receiving a fresh mount, I fell in with my company as we outpaced the distant pack train, visible only by its rising dust cloud. The official records say Private Martin delivered it faithfully. The history books claim Benteen arrived too late to matter. But ask yourself this: why was Martin, the lone Italian immigrant in an all-American regiment, spared when every other messenger died? Why did his testimony change key details over the years? And most chilling of all, what if Custer's last order wasn't lost, but ignored? The Battle of Little Bighorn wasn't just a military disaster, it was a conspiracy of silence. And John Martin, he wasn't just a messenger, he was the one man who could have told the truth.